Hello, we're John and Elizabeth.
Hello.
We're on Le Mont Saint Michel in Brittany. Corrick is in St Malo. This is the story of our trip getting over here, what we got right, what we got a little bit wrong, and the start of our
Adventure.
Northern France adventure.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoy the video. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.
Well, we're having a nice day. This is the only quiet part of Mont Saint Michel that we were able to find. It's absolutely heaving. Everybody videoing themselves. So we arrived, well, let's start at the beginning. We departed high water Portsmouth on Tuesday night. And the weather forecast was a bit marginal. It was going to be wind from the west and then going round into the north, but going light. And I thought there was just a chance that we might be able to make it under sail, but that was slightly forlorn hope. We did really well for the first 5-6 hours, something like that, while we were being lee bowed into the westerly wind on the ebb tide. But as the tide turned, the apparent wind dropped and we slowed right down, and we ended up motoring for a reasonable chunk of the way, across the shipping lanes mostly, and then...
Yeah, they weren't too bad. There wasn't as many merchant ships as I thought there was going to be.
No, it was quite quiet.
Right.
And then in the morning, as we approached Cap de la Hague, as you might reasonably expect, the wind piped up, always round headlands, and the, by then, west-going tide gave us a terrific boost round the corner. We got quite close to Cap de la Hague in 4 knots of tide round the corner, and then sucked down into the Alderney race, which, because the wind was northerly and we were wind with tide, was really quite mellow. But as the tidal stream effect dropped, our speed started to drop, and we had a decision to make whether we were going to press on to St Malo or make another choice. Bit of an error on my part. I hadn't really calculated the distances terribly accurately before we left.
We sort of, I don't know, we just didn't seem that organised.
No, we were a bit disorganised.
Very.
But in my head, St Malo was just round the corner. It wasn't until we got on the boat and started making the passage plan that we realised it was 140 miles. So instead of being 3 tides, 2 with, 1 against, it was really 4 tides worth of travel. And as we got south of Alderney, I thought, shall we pop into Guernsey or anchor in Sark? So we set a course that would give us those options, and in the end the wind died. We pulled into Sark, put the anchor down, and spent a couple of hours there having a nice little snooze.
Yeah.
A very lovely bay.
Some sticky ginger cake.
Sticky ginger cake, yeah. And that was really rather lovely. But when the tide started to go favourable again, or an hour or so before, so just to the point where it wasn't against us, we got going again. Again, reasonably nice sail for a couple of hours, but then as the wind right astern of us started to drop, we ended up having to motor again, because the risk was going to be that we got caught out by the next tide, this time pulling us out of the bay. So we carried on. The last couple of hours were under sail, which was fine.
Yeah,
nice.
Dodging a wind farm, which was massive.
Dodging a huge wind farm, but it was miles away. But we then came down into St Malo. First time for me in St Malo in about 40 years. No, that's not true. I came here once on a race, but all we did was get here and turn around.
I've never been here. It's beautiful.
Got in. We had an interesting choice whether to try to go to the inner harbour or the outer harbour. Advantages of the inner harbour: it's much more secure, much more sedate, much closer to the historic town of St Malo. Disadvantage are you have to go through a lock system, which was described by somebody we were chatting to later as a bit of a scrum, although we watched a changeover happen and it looked quite mellow to us. But I guess it depends if you're on the first or the last, whether there's a whole pile of fishing boats and merchant ships there. But also, once you're in, you're locked in, and therefore your choices of getting out are a little bit reduced. So we went to the Southerly Marina, which is quite nice. And it's very clear in the pilot book that in a slightly northerly breeze, the visitors' pontoons get very bouncy. And we came back from a very nice lunch to find the boat indeed bouncing around quite a bit. But by that stage, the harbour had largely cleared, and we were able to reposition the boat onto another visitors' pontoon a bit further in. And last night was
Comfortable.
very comfortable, despite the fact that there was 20 25 knots gusts from the northwest, which is when the pontoon is a little bit bouncy. Today got up nice and early, got the bus visiting Mont Saint Michel, and we'll give you a little bit of sight of that. It really was quite a wow sort of reaction when we arrived, wasn't it?
We've been to the one in Cornwall, but it's
St
not.
Michael's Mount in Cornwall. This is a slightly different scale. Pretty none that both of them are. So been for a wander around here, and we'll meander back, and then make some decisions about where to go. Having had weeks and weeks of very dry and northeasterly winds, it looks like the more traditional southwesterly breezes are in, and that's the direction that, of course, we want to now go. But we're not in a rush, so we'll make a bit of a plan, move on step by step.
It's been a while since we have posted anything.
Yeah.
That's because we've been doing a bit of racing.
Bit of racing last year and a few cross channels, which were fairly straightforward. Just getting across the channel is easy enough. It's 65, 70 miles, two tides. You really just need to draw the lum. For example, last time we were going to Cherbourg and St Var and Alderney, all from Portsmouth. And it really is just a case of draw the rum line, calculate what the aggregate tide is over the 12, 14 hours you're going to be sailing, put a little bit of a correction in to make sure that the tide takes you onto the target if you're a bit late. So maybe I shouldn't call it the target, but drag you on. This one was a little bit more complicated. We needed to be at Cap de la Hague. We really should have been there at about 5:30 in the morning. In the end, we weren't there till about 8, and those 2 hours of south-going tide really were the reason that we ended up, I think, not making it, which was bad planning on my part. We should potentially have got out of Portsmouth a bit earlier, but to be honest, the wind had gone light, and the boat does not motor anything like as well as it sails. Our plan for the next couple of weeks is to gently head west along the North Brittany coast, doing maybe every other port, with a view to then maybe doing every other port on the way back. But this is a part of the world I haven't explored in any great depth. I've been to a few of the places like Pampol and Tregear, but really looking forward to exploring somewhere slightly new.
And I think here they specialise in crepes, so we're going to have to
Yeah.
crepe ourselves out.
Yes. Yeah. One thing it may be worth mentioning, as we had light airs, they were from the north, the boat speed was reasonably low. We did have the option, of course, to put one of our spinnakers up, and we didn't do that, and we're much more comfortable with the spinnaker. Indeed, we were out racing last weekend and that was all fine, but at night in the shipping lane with the spinnaker, one person on deck, it just didn't seem terribly prudent, so we didn't, and we ended up preventing out the main and poling out the head sail, which works okay, but if there is a shift, then it does mean going up onto the foredeck at night in the dark, and moving the poles around,
Which I wasn't that keen on.
which you weren't that keen on, so we decided not to do. Well, we set them up, and we made sure they were fine, and it did give us a bit of speed, but we might well have made it if we'd had a more of a plan around the spinnaker, but we didn't, so we didn't. Elizabeth and I thought we'd put a little tiny bit of footage in of us actually walking through the gates, just to prove that we were actually here at Mont Saint Michel, not randomly sitting on a tiny bit of rock. What I would say is that it is absolutely heaving here, although the lady in the tourist office said that it was much quieter than the last couple of days, and it is in many ways characterised by, I'll show you that over my shoulder, a lot of small children eating what could best be described as their body weight in baguettes, but it is an extremely interesting looking place. We got back from Mont Saint Michel last night, potted around the, I was going to say the old part of town, but maybe the more historic part of town, the walled city, which was essentially destroyed in late 1940s, rebuilt. It looks absolutely fabulous, you know, really nice shops and bars and restaurants, so we spent a bit of time there, and then meandered back to the Southern Marina. We had dinner out last night and showed you the picture of that earlier. I think we're probably quite glad we're here. Seems a little bit quieter, and the facilities look a little bit better, don't they? Yeah. Tomorrow we'll fuel up and then we'll head into the runs. So all a bit of an adventure, that one. But we phoned them up today. They seem super helpful. So next report will be getting into and getting our way down into the Rance itself. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.